Hey, folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. I am Robert, your resident Gen Xer, and then right over there is John. He is your resident millennial, the man with the plan from Alakazam.
Wow.
Do you remember
That was
Alakazam?
no, I don't.
Mm,
Hey, we got Midget B in the house calling us wanking salutes.
I don't
Well,
even
I'd
know.
wear that with a pride of or a badge of honor. And we got RRC saying, "What's up, fellas? What's up, RRC?
Welcome
How's
to
it
the
going?"
show, fellas. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. I'm just going to put it out there. I think Midget wants to be British. I think deep down he's wanting to become British. I do. John, how are
I'm
you
pretty
doing?
sure he's Scottish in ancestry and German, I think, some shit like that.
I didn't know they were that short. Germans
Yeah,
maybe.
they are.
Mm,
All of them are.
yeah. Not that he's short. He's just that short. I
He
say
is a
that.
wee lad, isn't he?
We lad is a good way to put it. I
Yeah,
like that.
it's endearing. Yeah.
And not a wee lad unless that's what he's
No.
into. Probably wants
Probably
to be
wants to be.
taller too.
Oh, poor midget.
I wish I was a baller. I wish I was taller. So, John, how things been? How things been with you? Good week.
Very long week and very tiring week.
You know,
The
John,
whole thing, with work. Don't you? What? You don't care?
we just
You
get
don't
tired of
care?
hearing it. Nobody cares. Nobody
Well, I
cares.
get tired too. So
You live in a
it is
country
what
of
it is.
overworked people. We are an
It's
overworked
true.
nation, so
Got to
which
go get them wage slaves, or slave wages, as it
hey,
were.
Brandon
Hey,
Sullivan in the
Brandon Sullivan,
house.
what's up?
Hey,
What's up?
if you haven't done it already, folks, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit all those buttons that make happy things go on, and make sure that we're getting the props for whatever they're worth. Props or something, right? We've got props. Look, we've got props all over the place.
Yeah,
Uh,
all in the
and there's
backgrounds,
nothing wrong with folks
stuff
giving
over
us
there.
props. It saves puppies. It
It
does.
does.
It saves puppies.
Funny thing is, that's an old meme from like when we first started going live, and no one was there except for like Midget P. No one was there to see that.
It's an older
But
meme,
look at
sir, but it
that.
checks out.
Does check out.
It does check out. So, John, these last few days have, I'd say the last 4 days have been kind of fun, crazy, kooky stuff. I don't know. Did you get a chance to watch the debates or listen to them or anything?
No, I haven't gotten a chance to do that.
Oh,
Yeah,
poor
I'm
guy.
not really all that interested, to be fair.
They were actually
Um,
kind of fun. They were actually kind of fun.
yeah.
Get them down to 7 people, they start getting a little a little bit. There was a little bit. There was some of that going
Jesus.
on. There was. I swear there was. I saw it.
All right. No, but I have seen some of the memes that have come out of it, so that's pretty sweet.
Memes,
Yeah,
child's
memes are
play.
fun.
So before you've had something going on the last little bit,
Yeah,
Mister Twitter cancer feeder,
that's right.
Mister
I,
Twitter.
I I
You've
did
been Twitter pated.
I did decide to dive headfirst into the cancer, and I'm back with my report. Um, so I got into it with was it Jake from formerly Hugo and Jake, but now Hannah and Jake from formerly the Bible Reloaded on
Now,
Twitter.
if you could, can you, for those of us like myself who may not be as familiar with him, can you give us a little background on this individual,
Oh
these
man,
individuals?
yeah. So they were when they were coming up, it was part of the big like the atheist kind of sect of YouTube, where it was all like atheists versus Christians and all this kind of stuff. And then I believe about 2014 is when the whole feminism thing started to really kick off. And so that group, that atheism sect, kind of got broken apart or had a schism where some people went towards like the pro feminism side, some people went towards the anti feminism side. Um, and so that kind of broke that group up. Now, those two, what former Hugo and Jake, now Hannah and Jake, went towards the pro feminism side and pro, intersectionality and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, they're both raging leftists now,
Leave
which
it.
is unfortunate because I had a lot of respect for both of them for a long time.
See, leave it to some feminism to fuck up a perfectly good atheist party,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, feminism is a religion.
No.
They're just asking, are they still doing TQR, which is the Quran Reloaded? I don't know. I haven't seen anything. I'm not even sure if I'm still subscribed to that channel. I might have got unsubscribed by YouTube. I have no idea if they're still doing that or not. I would doubt it, but I don't know though. I don't know because they're pretty critical of all religions, so maybe. But anyway, you okay over there? You doing all right?
Yeah, they can't hear me.
Oh, so so yeah. Anyway, so Jake posted this article on Twitter that was saying it was about this like little 5-year-old girl who had found out that some of the kids at her school were in lunch debt, which I'm guessing that means that I did read the article. Don't get me wrong, I did read the article before I responded, but it was basically just it was singing her praises. The article was that she opened a lemonade stand and sold a bunch of lemonade and gave the money to pay off some kids' debts for lunch for elementary school, and which is awesome. Like that's pretty great. But he was saying, how it was terrible that this was even the case, that it had to happen this way. That kids should get free lunches basically, and so or that they should have them provided for them, whatever. And so I just commented underneath. I didn't expect to even get anything back from him. What did I say? Something like, "Yeah, charity is garbage unless it's done by the government." Nice take, like that. And I thought that was pretty good response. But then he starts going off about how charity doesn't give enough, and that basically there's no reason why kids should have lunch debt, which I think is kind of ridiculous too. That kids would have lunch debt. It's either you have the money for it and you pay it, or you don't. I mean, I understand. Yeah, you don't want to be seen
Well,
as not giving kids food
well,
at the school.
that's just it. I mean,
Yeah, no, I understand.
in regards to the story about the girl, when it's all said and done, there may have been debts there, but the school is going to continue to give the kids lunches even if they
Right.
go into arrears, and those debts will be assessed with the family,
Yeah.
which they should be. I mean, parents parents should be providing lunch for their kids at school, right? They should make the funds available. I think to be honest, I mean, I was the parent that took, gave made lunch for my kids to take with them to school because I didn't want them eating the school lunch.
Yeah.
Because I don't trust it to be the best lunch, right? Um, but if they went to school, you have a lunch card at school, and parents
Hmm.
can just put money on that card on the
Yep.
account, and it goes against their lunches. Um, but surprisingly enough, the problem is a lot of people have a problem with I know that he talked about how schools will give substandard lunches to those kids that don't have money versus the
Yeah.
regular lunch that the other kids are eating. But the idea that you know
Well, no, I mean the
lunch
difference is you
ultimately
pay.
should be provided.
But see, no, he's twisted it there. Because I do remember that one part. He's twisted it there where they say they give substandard lunches to kids who can't afford it. When meanwhile, what actually happens is you have to pay more to get more lunch. Like you can actually go and get, either like more lunch, like a second, lunch, or
Well, sure, you can pick up
different
add-ons and
options.
stuff, right?
Right, exactly. So it's not that you're being given substandard lunch. It's that someone else is buying. I don't know what's more than like
Well, I
more lunch than others have.
I will say this at for instance the school that my daughters
Yeah,
go to.
I remember that, Brandon. He said I used to live off those damn cookies at Seminole. That
Um,
was my lunch. Yeah, no, I remember that.
the When my girls, when they would go, and if for whatever reason, we hadn't, we forgot to put money on the card or whatever, they did have a specific lunch for kids that didn't have money at the time.
Yeah,
So it wasn't the same exact lunch. You went and you got this other lunch, which was, a cheaper lunch for all intents and purposes, but it was not the same lunch, or it was not, just the base lunch that you could put add-ons with. It was a
yeah,
secondary lunch that they had for students that didn't have, that weren't able to afford lunch. So this
yeah.
happens at schools. Now, was it a substandard lunch? No, it was just more of a cold lunch, like a brown sack lunch versus the hot meal lunch. Is
Right.
basically what it equates to. There's an apple in there, there's a simple sandwich, that kind of thing, and that's your lunch. You know,
Yeah.
um, but it does suck to put kids in that position. You got to be the sack
Yeah,
lunch kid that
it's not
they.
the kid's fault.
No.
Yeah, I mean, the kid didn't do anything wrong.
But
You know.
but to expect the school, I don't know. It's a fine line there. I mean, back in the day, once upon a time, long ago, before my time. I mean,
Holy shit!
you sent
Was it
lunch.
before your time?
You sent lunch with your kids, right? That's just how
Yeah.
it was. There wasn't a cafeteria at the school making lunches, and now I think it's gotten out of hand. I mean, schools have breakfast now. Like you can go there and get breakfast in the morning before school. So they have a whole
Yes.
breakfast schedule going on.
Yep.
They have concession stand, like you can go and buy snacks and stuff in the middle
Oh
of the
yeah, vending
day. The
machines.
vending
Yeah.
machines, that's insane to me. These kind of things are just like wow. It really takes things for and you know again, I was the parent that, along with the lunch, I sent two snack sacks too. There's a
Yeah.
midday snack and an end of day snack that's available in their lunch, that kind of thing, because they'll get hungry. So I understand the premise for having snacks and stuff there, but I don't know, man. It's in some places it just seems to have gotten out of hand. Um,
Yeah. Let's look at the chat real quick. This Midget B saying, it's stigmatizing, Robert. It's not fair to make people feel different or make them face hardships. Please raise my kids, Daddy Government. Yeah, that's the worst part. That's what really got me. I'm not sure if I really expressed that very well because I don't think I really got a chance to. Um, it was actually the first time I've ever experienced being like brigaded against on Twitter. So that was an interesting, experience. I just kind of like stepped back and looked at it objectively and looked at all the people and what they were saying. Most of them were useless. Most of them were just like fuck him and fuck this guy and all this kind of stuff. Which, by the way, they assumed my gender, which I didn't appreciate. Um, but uh, but yeah, it was just really interesting, especially seeing the responses. Like I don't really want to say anything bad about Jake because he was like respectful the whole time, even though we completely disagreed. He himself was respectful and uh, he didn't try and say like I was an evil person or anything. He actually did try and make me understand, which obviously I understand his point of view. Known him for a long ass time, not known him personally, but have been watching his material for a long time and all that kind of stuff. I get where he's coming from, um, but yeah, no, it was just interesting watching these responses and what a fairy tale world these people live in.
well, let me
Which is
ask.
very interesting.
Well,
And no, Midget P, I didn't need to mute the thread. Like, it's not like my fifis were fine.
right.
I don't care if some random douchebag on Twitter says it's fine. I
Um,
was just looking at it as like just it's interesting what people think and what they say and that kind of thing.
okay, so from you talked about stepping back and looking at it objectively. Um, well, let's do that for a second and answer this question for me. So, if you have a public school and they make lunch, and you have kids that don't have money to afford to eat lunch. Are we in agreement that those kids should be provided a lunch? The school should go ahead and provide them a lunch anyway if they don't have money. Correct?
Yeah, I mean the way that, yeah, yeah, sure. The way
Okay.
that it's set up, especially now with compulsory schooling, yeah.
Right. So
If you're gonna force a kid to go to school, you should provide at least some of the materials for them.
okay. So where does the cost for that fall? If you know that the parent's not going to pay that money, where does the
Yeah,
cost fall then? It falls to the school, right? Or the taxpayer
right.
dollar that's funding the school. So basically, government money is funding those lunches that can't be paid for. You are frozen, sir. Why are you frozen? John, can you hear me? John. So this is John falling apart on us, folks. John falling apart again. Um, so I'll attempt to get John back. And there he
Holy
is.
shit!
Hey,
There
you
we
made
go.
it back. Hi, welcome
I
back.
did. Holy fuck! What happened?
Yeah, somebody there eating your bandwidth.
Oh yeah, that's probably true.
Blame everybody else. All right, so the cost ultimately is going to fall on the government, the taxes that are funding the school, right?
Hmm.
So how is it too hard to imagine that the mindset immediately goes, well, if paying for kids that don't have money for lunches is going to fall on the taxpayer dollar, is going to fall on the school to provide anyway, why not just make all meals provide all meals for all students?
Yeah, no, I mean I understand. The argument. I understand where it's coming from. However, especially with an argument that he made, because he asked, oh, do you even know where funding for schools come from? I'm like, yeah, mostly from property taxes in those communities. His response to that was some communities were poor, or some communities are poor.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, great. So what? Those communities don't get lunches, but the other ones do, or are we just going to federalize everything?
Right. Well, the school is still, even if the community's poor, the school still gets funded by the state, right?
Yeah,
And of course, there's federal dollars involved as well, of course, from
there
the
are some.
Department
Yeah,
Department of Education. So the school is being funded, and the food is being provided. And I can guarantee you, in those areas, um, in low income neighborhoods where there's schools, 9 out of 10 students are receiving free lunches without an accrual of debt going on. I mean, there are lunch programs put in place in these
right.
poverty-stricken areas for those schools. So it's happening in those places again. So it feeds into this mindset of the liberal elite, as it were. Oh well, everybody's meals should be free. If everybody's meals
Right.
should be free at school,
Well, not
but
only
that was
that,
never a part of school.
but there were also a bunch of arguments about how they should be like gourmet chefs and stuff. They brought up like, oh, in France,
Well,
their public schools have like gourmet chefs in the kitchen. They're fed,
that's
awesome
because they have
food.
so many fucking chefs. They can't get jobs. There's too
They
many
can't
in the
get jobs
restaurants. They got
anywhere
to
else.
work at fucking schools. I mean,
Yeah,
says
yeah,
it's
but
in fucking France. What do you
but no, I mean
expect?
the point of that is though is that it's not going to stop. They're never going to stop spending your money. You know what I mean?
Well,
It's
of
it's always like,
course.
oh well, okay, now all the kids' food. Let's say all the kids' lunches are paid for now.
Right,
I
right.
mean,
Well,
it doesn't stop there.
I understand that,
That's the
and
point.
and the
Yeah.
argument and any argument about school lunches, if you're talking about the finances of it, that's the wrong argument to be making because the quality of school lunches is more important than the cost. If they were, I would accede to, okay, provide free lunches for students at schools if it was good quality food. You know, I mean, you know, that's the only bitch I have in paying for lunches at school is the quality of the food and what they're giving the students, what they're allowing the kids to eat, right?
Hmm.
But this idea that I know he was talking about how charity doesn't work, and I have to agree with that to a certain extent. Charity can only do so much, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't work,
Right,
right?
exactly.
But now, would I agree that charity in this country would rise to the level needed to replace, let's look at welfare, homeless
Hmm.
programs, things like this. I honestly don't think the charity level in this country could reach those levels, could not reach the amount of spending that we do to assist people in this
Right.
country.
And that's something that he brought up as well. He brought up numbers. How much the welfare, state spends and how much charity is taken in, and yeah, I think it was like 410 billion for charity and like 3 point something trillion for welfare. Um, and I mean, my point was about bureaucracy when it comes to that. Like, how much of that is actually going to its intended,
Oh,
target,
sure,
as
sure.
opposed to being spent on bureaucracy,
Right.
wastefulness, corruption,
Sure.
these sorts
That
of
seems
things.
like an extremely large number anyway. 3 trillion,
It
like
does
over
seem
the
like a
course of
large
how
number,
long?
but yeah, it does seem like a large number. But I mean, I just took it, because I was first of all I was at work while I was having this argument too. So I just took it at face value and said, assuming that that's correct, here's the issue with it, right? How much of that is actually going, to where it's intended to go, and
I
how much of it's being wasted or put in other people's pockets, and this kind of thing. Whereas with charity, yes, that can happen, but on a much much smaller scale.
Well, and I think the other issue that you run into with charity is that charity is much more focused. That's the thing.
Hmm.
Like, so somebody can raise $100,000, but that might be going to cancer research.
Right.
So there's $100,000 of your, the charity number, the charity statistic, that's going to a very specific thing. So when we really break it
Yeah.
down, you get into an even larger disparity between the amount that's actually going to people in need versus other people.
Yeah.
The two differences in need. You know what I'm
I
saying?
mean, while that's true, yes. However, the benefit to that is that you can choose where your dollar goes, as opposed to being forced to give your money to someone and they get to decide where it goes.
Well, yes, I understand that.
That's what I'm saying. That's the benefit to it. That's why I would say that's a better system.
Right, but if 80% of charity winds up going to very specific causes, and only 20% actually is being donated to help those in need. When we talk about welfare programs, and those are the people I'm talking about in this scenario, if only 20% of the charity is going in that direction versus the more focused needs, then again, you know, we're going to have some very serious issues trying to balance charity versus the need in this country because the population continues to increase. The job
Hmm.
market is continuing to evolve in various directions. I was just chuckling to myself as a side note, thinking about like these mobile games, these idle mobile games where you just kind of set it and it runs. Well, as you go, you start your money starts chinking up into the millions, and then you start playing with billions and this kind of thing, and that's where our economy's gone. Now, when we have discussions, when we're talking about welfare, now instead of talking about 30 years ago we were talking about millions, and then we 20 years ago, 15 years ago, we're talking in the billions, and now we're starting
Now
to
we're in
use
trillions.
trillions. We're
Yeah.
looking at we're looking at a potential UBI from Andrew Yang that's going to cost trillions of dollars. We've got a
Right.
debt that's trillions. Now we're in the trillions, right? We're starting to bandy that word around, and that's a pretty big fucking number to bandy around, especially when someone throws out there $3 trillion on welfare programs.
Yeah.
I can't. I trying to. I don't think that's. I can't buy that number. Like that's not a year. That can't be a yearly statistic.
I
And
don't
if it
think that's a
is,
yearly thing. I don't think that's a yearly thing.
yeah, if it is, we need to
No
do
way.
some really major stuff. I see Ron Helton has shown up in the chat.
Oh,
It's
hey,
good to
what's
see
up,
him
man?
around. That means we may see Ed popping his head in here because
Oh, please God, no.
I believe Mr. Helton enjoys a little bit of Ed before his
He does.
gap. He likes to have a little Ed before his gap. I like
He's
this.
he's an Ed head, I guess you could say.
Mm,
Oh, we should tell him about that. We should let him use that. His fans call him Ed heads.
that
I
would be
like it.
good.
Yeah.
Would ours be gap heads?
Yeah. No,
Rather.
that sounds weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Mm.
No, ours are just assholes and douchebags. Let's call them
So, John,
that.
so I do find this is an interesting one, especially to ask a libertarian. So now, see, keep bearing in mind and keeping in mind the fact that we have mandatory school as it stands with our educational system. Blah blah blah. What would be the libertarian mindset on how school lunches should be addressed?
What the
If we
libertarian
right
mindset on it?
right so if we have mandatory education, your kids have got to go to school. What is your mindset on school lunches that makes it equitable for everyone involved sending their kids to public schools?
Well, I mean, if that's the case, yeah, I mean, you should obviously pay for your, pay for your lunch. If you can't, send your kid to school with a lunch. I mean, most people, like you mentioned off mic, that's the most important thing that you buy for the house is food.
Right, right. It is kind of hard to imagine that you couldn't put something together for your kid to take for lunch,
Right.
because the question is, what if your kid was at home for the day?
Yeah. I mean, if you're not feeding your kid, they're gonna get taken away.
Right.
So,
There's a thinking, right?
yeah. So, yeah, I mean that would be the way to go about it. And like I said, charity. If you really can't, I mean, there's places like Goodwill. There's churches that will give you food. You know what I mean, for free.
What
There are always options.
what if I said this? What if I made this proposal? What if I said kids go to school from 6 until noon? They go from 6 till noon 12 months out of the year. They go to full-time school. They'll have appropriate breaks broken up, spring break, Christmas break, things like this, but there
Sure.
won't be a long summer break. Kids will go to school, but they'll only go 6 hours a day. And the snack will be provided midday, so it'll be some sort of fruit, some simple thing that's very cost effective that the school can provide, but there will no longer be a cafeteria for lunches. Um, Anything like that, they can have the vending machines, they can have their little buy a snack counter if you want, but there will no longer be lunches provided. And there will be a short snack period where a kid can have a snack to eat, but they're home for lunch. They'll be coming home at lunch. They can have
Hmm.
breakfast before they go, and they'll be coming home late. Let's make it 6:30 start time. We'll make it a 5.5 hour day. Make sure that they have time to get some breakfast in them, and then we don't have to worry about lunches at schools anymore.
I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't want to dictate how a school does, their scheduling and stuff. Um,
But we
plus,
already do that, is what I'm
plus,
saying.
what can you? I mean, I guess you could do quite a bit of education in 5.5 hours, but at the same time, once you get
Well,
into like high school and stuff, and you start getting into more complicated stuff,
hold
you
on
would,
though. Remember, you're going an additional 2.5 months,
yeah.
so you have that time to spread the additional curriculum out over. So because you have to imagine basically losing about 15 to 20 minutes of you're missing out two classes in a day, but one of PE nobody does fuck
Nobody
PE
gives a
or
fuck about PE.
nobody wants PE anymore anyway. But still, you can fit 5 to 6 classes in and spread it over the course of the year. You can get a full year's education in that time frame. Hold on, let's go.
Yeah.
Midget says it says that If the kids are at home for the day, they're eating snacks and junk food and drinking soda. He said he's. I don't like that he threw pronoun in there. Assuming pronouns of the kids that stay home
Well,
from
yeah,
school.
because
That's
only
just
as we know that only boys eat junk food and drink
right.
soda. So
Drink
they probably
snacks.
play video games too.
Remember
Fucking
now. Notice there's snacks and junk food. So there's snacks and then there's junk food because the kid is at least smart enough to eat snacks, but not junk food for snacks.
right.
Am I right there? Is that how that works?
Sure.
Ron Held says we have a local food bank that has food drives on a regular basis. They leave a bag at the mailbox. We fill it and leave it for the postman to collect. Yes, those are good.
Yeah.
High schools should start later.
This is Cameron
Why?
Michael who is in the chat now.
Why should high school start later? No, you see this. Brandon Sullivan says that's cool, Ron. I actually remember that when I was a kid in Oregon. Thought it was a good idea. The damn kids should be working in damn fields after damn school. Listen to Midget. Okay, so this high schools should start later. You know what? Fuck that. I don't think any
Yeah.
school should start. In fact, I think schools should start extremely early. We need to get back to this time where people were getting up at 5 o'clock in the fucking morning and getting about their day. It's like, why aren't you awake when the sun's coming up? If the sun
Yeah.
can be bothered to get up, you should get the fuck up.
Not only that,
And-
but the one of the few benefits of schooling and the way that the way that it's approached now is that it does teach things like discipline in the way of getting up at a certain time in order to be at a certain place at a certain time. I mean that's you're gonna see that with any job you have to be there on time, and that's a problem I have with that I've had with people working under me in my current job, is that some people just can't seem to fucking get there on time. No matter what time it is, even if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I understand maybe you're tired as fuck. I understand that because I am too. Whether it's 4, 5, 6 o'clock, or if it's even as late as 8 or 9 o'clock, people not showing up until like 11.
right.
I mean, those people are gone. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, that fucks up our entire day.
Well,
And so, no, but yeah, you understand what I'm saying, though, right?
Yeah.
Is that it teaches you to get used to that,
exactly.
before you start actually having to do it.
Well, like that's one of the reasons why I will point young adults towards the military too,
Yeah,
especially in this day and age, because there's a good chance that they didn't get that when they were growing up in the present day and age. So the military can teach you that kind of structure, like you're talking about, that they may not
yeah.
they may not have gotten at home. But real quick, Brandon and Ron make a good point. High school should not start later. So high school should start earlier, so the kids get out earlier and they can go get a
Right.
fucking job. They need to learn to
Right.
get a
Or
fucking
even
job.
or even extracurricular activities, even if you're
Right.
doing sports or
Sure.
something like that. You know what I
Sure.
mean? You're doing
Sports.
something that's going to
And then when you get done
be
with the
good for you
sports,
later in
go
life.
get a fucking job.
Right.
Learn what
Yeah.
it's like. You got to learn what it's like in the real world, and they don't do enough of this. When I was growing up, and yes, I grew up in Oklahoma. Yes, we had a small farm, but I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning, and I was feeding animals. I was cleaning things out in the just all sorts of shit that you had to do in the morning before you had to go and get ready, and then grab a bite and go and walk down to catch a bus to get to school. You actually had to get up and work in the morning before you went to school. This
Right.
idea that I won't sleep till 10 o'clock in the fucking morning. What? You went to
I'll
bed
be doing that tomorrow.
but what time are you going to bed? There's a difference too.
Yeah.
Cameron says biological sleep patterns shift as children grow up. It's natural for teens to find it difficult to fall asleep before 11. Teens need about 8 to 10 hours of sleep each night to function best. And with more than 40% of public high schools starting class before 8, polls of teens show that a third of teens report falling asleep at their desk. And
Okay, so there's a lot wrong there. So hang on. There's a lot to unpack there. That's just absolutely wrong. Biological sleep
Questionable.
patterns shifting as children grow up. I mean, that's true, but that's not like
that's
mostly
self-induced.
behavioral. That's mostly right. That's mostly self-induced. It's natural for teens to find it difficult to fall asleep before 11 p.m. Yeah, that's because they're up jerking off all night, and
Or,
then
or talking to their friends, or playing
right,
games, doing
exactly.
things at that time of night.
That keeps especially things that keep your brain active,
Right,
like
that are
video games
keeping
do
you
do
going.
that. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. That's something that my
Digital
mom was.
sugar. Digital
That's,
sugar.
that's something my mom tried to get out of me. When I was a teenager, was no video games 2 hours before you have to go to bed.
Right.
2 hours before 11 or whatever. So it was nine
Right.
o'clock.
The wind down
Um,
period before bed.
right, exactly. And I did obviously. I always try to find a way around that, but and teens need about 8 to 10 hours of sleep each night to function best. Well, no, that's a generalization. Just saying teens, because some people can function perfectly fine off of 4 hours. Some people need 12 hours.
Um,
Like
and
it just depends on the person.
based off, and I will say this, based off of having children and reading up on sleep cycles, how much sleep they should be getting, so that you know whether or not they're normal. Yeah, by the teen years, they're sleeping 8 hours a night. They should be on regular adult sleeping
Hmm.
cycles. That 10 hours, yes, 8 to 10 hours, they will sleep that long because, yes, they are staying awake for longer periods of
Right,
time. And yes, schools, the balancing schoolwork on top of all the desire to do other socially teen like things,
right.
it does it does exhaust a teen. I won't
And
say
then
that it doesn't.
and then with the next one, polls of teens show a third of teens report falling asleep at their desks. So that's a third. That's not even a majority. And that's also polls, which are heavily skewed a lot of the time. They're the way they ask questions, pretty ridiculous. So you're basically asking teens if they're falling asleep at their desks. Some of them will say yes, but why?
Right, and
And then they're
that's
gonna
the
say
other
why,
question. Why did you fall asleep? Were
it's,
you tired or bored? you know
or both,
or
or
both.
both. Yeah, no, there's a lot wrong with what's going on with what you just said there, Cameron.
um,
Um,
he says an early school start time is not conducive to learning in adolescence, and I completely disagree with that, because I think morning time is your best time for everything,
yeah,
because you get up in the morning and we have things that we do in the morning, very specific things. Many of us drink coffee, we drink something. A lot of people, it's juice or it's milk. You're drinking something in the morning that is putting vitamins, it's putting nutrients, it's starting your flow of energy. Many of us eat breakfast first thing in the morning. We get up, we have breakfast. A lot of people go jog, take a shower. You're doing all of these things that spark your energy flow, that spark your mind. It's waking your mind up. And when your mind is waking up, it is when it
hmm
is most absorbent, when you
yep,
haven't had a deluge of things going on throughout the course of the day that have caused thought paths just going off on tangents for hours, right? You don't have all of that going on in the morning. That's why, I would have when I would teach sales, I wanted to get people in first thing in the morning. I wanted them early, and I told them, you get up and you have yourself a routine, get yourself ready, and you come in,
right,
and boom, you hit them as much as you can. Kids are the same way. When they wake up, man, they are ready for knowledge as long as you do it in the proper way. But I will
right,
say that schools don't necessarily do it in the proper way. You do not have teachers that are on top of teaching to the
yeah,
the age group that they're teaching to, whatever the case may be, or maybe they just don't love their job because they're underpaid. There's a lot of factors that go
yeah,
into it. The the environment in which students are being taught is so much more an impact on their learning than anything else, on their focus, their attention. It really is. Motivated students stay awake for class. It is what
yeah.
it is. Yes, Brandon says yes, and I do think waking up early did give me a responsibility that was probably my first struggle at a responsibility, actually, but helped me grow up a little at
Exactly.
least. Actually, I consistently did the best grade wise and knowledge retention in my early classes.
Right.
Helton says we fed the chickens, milked the cows, horses, goats before the sun came up when we were kids. Yep. In the afternoon, if you didn't have a job, then it was off to the garden to weed and water. Yes, sir. That's exactly how it was. That's the shit you were doing. And it didn't matter. And the sucky part about it was, and I remember this, We used to take gallon jugs from milk, from all the milk, and we would
Hmm.
use those to water, carry large amounts of water. So I would sit and fill up, and I would carry them three per hand, 3 gallons of water per hand. And I was a little guy, but you learn to do it
Yeah,
in the dead of winter. Having to go out there, the ground is all frozen and everything.
and
You
you had
go
to
out
go
there.
uphill, right? You had to
No,
go
no.
uphill
You
both
just had to
ways.
you had to go and you had to fill up 6 gallons of water out of the faucet, cold as fuck, and then
Just
lug it
freezing on
over.
the way down. Like,
Yes, I was just like, oh my god, I can't believe I can walk and I can function in this. But yes, that's the kind of shit you're doing, and these days, kids are hard pressed to, what do you mean I've got to walk a block to school?
I have to take the trash out. Yeah,
What? I have to
God,
do what? You want me?
yeah.
I've got to get ready for school. I can't do that. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's a much easier. And granted, it's in the environment you live in. Yes, out in the Midwest, they're still getting up in the morning and they're still doing this kind of shit. So,
Sure.
so take it with a grain of salt. If you grew up in I'll call it a a pampered environment, as it were. If you didn't grow up with responsibilities of day-to-day functions that went on outside of school, well,
And yeah, it's gonna
count
suck for you.
yourself fucking lucky. Count yourself fucking lucky.
Not only that, but it's gonna suck for you because you actually have to do something.
But there's more onus. There's more onus on parents that don't have those kind of environments that they're raising their children in to take to do this, to wake their children up early in the morning, to get them doing some sort of routine, some sort of functions in the morning that get their day started, so they get on a cycle of actually, you know, walking around, walking in the daylight, as it were. You live in the daylight, so when the sun comes up, you're up. When the sun goes down, you're preparing to go down.
Hmm.
That kind of thing. Now, granted, daylight savings time kind of fucks that up, but still.
Yeah.
Ed's in the house. He says, dude, during harvest, I was lucky if I got 10 hours of sleep a week when I was 15. Amen, brother. Amen. Farming is,
Yeah.
there it is, Cameron. That's what you need to understand. Farming is not conducive to the learning of in adolescence. It certainly is not.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, though, farmers are lower class, so they're not really worried about them. Can't be worried about farmers. They're just a bunch of ignorant assholes.
Yeah. And that is what I have always wondered, is why we have never had more of an agricultural kickback in this country. Like, if the farmers all got together and they were like, fuck harvest. Enjoy your grocery stores bare, bitches. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like, there's a full throttle control thing going on there that they have that
yeah.
they've never really brought to bear and like
Well, I mean,
really
the thing is,
set
they
their
do
place
get
at the table, as it were.
yeah, but they do get like agricultural subsidies and stuff like that, and they do fuck over. No, they take advantage of emergency funds and things like that with government. Like they'll actually flood parts of their crops and say oh well we had this we had less of a turnout or whatever less of a harvest this year. And they'll get money from the government
Well, yeah,
for that.
but no, but you understand what I'm saying. I mean,
Did you turn your camera off, or is that just on?
whatever it is that's on your side, because I'm seeing it on mine. OBS has got it. Is it flickering right now?
No, no, no. It's better, kind of. I think it might be my internet again.
Well, your internet shouldn't be making my camera flicker on my side,
Well,
unless
no, that's what I
unless
was
it's
asking.
fucking with the call. I don't think
Maybe
anything's
I don't
wrong
know.
with it. Maybe
No, it's
Discord.
fine now. It's fine now.
Maybe Discord's having hiccups. Um,
Gotcha.
but it's interesting to me that you know I don't think people have the mindset with raising kids these days like they used to. Yes, apparently this is where our conversation has gone to. It's
Yeah.
talking about raising kids, but um, you know, they
Well, I mean,
people
it's about
people
responsibility, right? Raising
right.
kids responsibly and teaching them responsibility. I
Well,
mean, what we were originally talking about was parental responsibility, making
Sure,
sure that the
sure,
bills are paid, making sure that your kid has
sure.
lunch to go to school with, or at least a way
Right.
to acquire lunch at
Right,
school,
setting an
whatever it is.
example, as it were,
Right,
right?
right.
But at the same, in this, and at the same time, I don't know. I feel like there are people that look at around me that look at my parenting. I say I feel this way, but I kind of know that it's the thing. That I'm very rigid and very harsh in the way I parent. But I don't, I approach parenting from the standpoint that whether you're 1 year old or you're 17 years old, I'm teaching you rules that are going to that work. Is how life is going to be when you're out there on your own.
Right.
You should be learning that from day one. Now, yes, I understand a 1 year old, an infant. You're not doing a lot of reprimanding. I get
No,
that,
no, no,
but
no. But you're
you're
doing,
talking to them.
simple things. Yeah.
You're teaching, right? You're guiding.
Right.
But as you begin to incorporate discipline, it needs to be a discipline that they need to understand is this is exactly how it's going to be in the world. This idea that you don't tell your children no. I'm like, no. No is a word they need to be very used to hearing because out in the real world, it's a no, it's a word that you hear a lot. You hear it a lot. Rejection's a common thing in the real world.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that you can't do. You have to walk around with no ready in your head when you start to do no, I better not do that. No, I better not do that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's just life. Um,
Right.
Helton says we had 5 gallon buckets that we filled halfway and carried one in each hand, and walked down to the garden about a quarter mile to water the tomatoes. Luckily, it was downhill. Yeah, 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 yeah. He had them 5 gallon buckets, lucky bastard.
And he had it downhill. How lucky. He was cobbled
Ours
even.
was Oklahoma, so it was just all flat. Just flat.
Yeah.
Brandon says I'm now in the mindset that I hate sleeping in. I agree. Even now, even on non-work days, I hate feeling like I throw days away. Exactly. I hear you on that, Ron. Used to do the same for our horse in Oregon. First winter I was there, I left my bucket right there on the trail and went inside to the fire. Ed says we've got 5 watching and 4 likes. Fix that.
Yeah.
Somebody fix
Yeah.
it. Brandon says, my grandpa came in cursing up and down, ready to kill me last time I ever made that mistake. Yes, you don't make that mistake too often either, do you?
Yeah.
But, it's, I don't see anything wrong with discipline in the household, structure, organization, things like this, the things that you're teaching your kids.
Mhm.
You can start that immediately. Life lessons should start immediately.
Yeah, of
I mean,
course.
and I know I say no to my kids, my grandkids a lot. No, no, get back from the TV, come away from there. But,
Mhm.
it's like, I go in there 3 days ago and it's like the reason why you tell kids not to get back from the TV is so I'm not standing here with the Windex cleaning off these sticky smudge stains across this television screen that are cutting
Right.
right across the picture I'm trying to watch.
Right.
That's why we tell them these things constantly. You're
Yeah.
watching them. It's crazy, and
But
people
remember, she's just trying to express herself. She's finding her identity right
right.
now.
Um, yeah, these and nobody wants advice. Nobody you can't tell anybody how to raise their kids. You can't give them advice now.
Yeah.
But they'll quickly run and grab a book off a shelf. They'll buy books that'll tell them how to raise their
The
kids.
same thing that you just told them.
Right, the same thing that
Yeah.
you could tell them, or a better version. You could probably tell them a better version that's simpler and easier. For me, it's all like, you want to discipline your kids, you need one thing that's very simple. The tone of voice is all it takes.
Hmm.
No is a
Yeah.
very simple word to get across in that tone. And when you speak in that tone, a very just authoritarian tone, kids
Hmm.
listen. They want structure. They want to
Yeah,
be
they do.
within boundaries. They do. They thrive on it. Cameron. That's how they function. Is whenever you give them very specific, tight boundaries to
Yeah.
stay within, and keep blinders on them to all the bullshit distractions that are out there. Keep them focused and keep them aware of what's going on, but have them stay focused. God, it's crazy. Everybody's just like, well, no, just I don't want to tell them no because it gives them a complex. Oh, I need to ask their permission. No, you
Yeah.
don't. Please step away from your goddamn friendly parenting. Your
Yeah.
friendly parenting is fucking your children up.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the thing about the boundaries, right? The reason why they like it, thrive on it, is because they are learning about everything. They come into the world knowing absolutely nothing. So the more and more that there is, the more and more confusing the world is. But if they're in these boundaries, they're saying, okay, I know I can do this. This I know this. This is familiar. It makes them a lot more comfortable because it's not as confusing. It helps them make sense of the world. But then as they
Right.
get older, those boundaries kind of expand until they're gone.
I
That's how it's supposed to be, not just throw them out into the world and be like, all right, go figure it out. You know?
Well, I've always seen it as this is a great analogy. It's like standing in a box, and you look to the side, and the box is 3 foot away on either side. All the walls are 3 foot away, but straight up, 30 foot up is an opening, but you can't reach the wall. So how the fuck do you get out, right? But if those boundaries close in, and now you're inches away from the walls. Now that 30 foot is accessible. So the tighter the boundaries, the more you want to climb, the more you can climb, the higher you can go because you can reach to higher levels when you've got something around you to hold on and a structure to give you
Right.
something to hold to. People don't get it. And they're like,
Yeah.
no, just let them do. No, they're just running around in fucking circles now. They're just out there running around in circles. They're bouncing off the walls. They're not going anywhere. They're not climbing. They're not excelling. I don't know. Maybe it's
Yeah.
just me. Maybe I don't understand kids anymore.
No,
Uh,
I don't think they're that different. I think that they're just being parented differently. I don't think kids have changed themselves. It's the parents.
Ron Helton says he lives south of Oklahoma City. Ron Helton, sir, I grew up in Oshaleta, Oklahoma. Just a little bit. That was south of Bartlesville. Was it south of Bartlesville? God, I'd have to look at a map. It's been so long. Oshaleta, Oklahoma. Not my sister wound up living in Oklahoma City for many years. Ed says I was good with fixing things, so I got relegated to the shop. Lucky bastard. He got to stay indoors and do the work. Uh, Brandon says, "Oh, I just give my daughter a look now, and she straightens up almost every time because she knows that tone is next." Exactly. See, and that's Brandon makes a good point. See, once you've
Yeah.
established the tone, then yes, things can be done with a look. Like I do this with my granddaughter all the time. Somebody be trying to get her to do something, and she won't. She'll be like, I'll just stand there and I'll look at her, or sometimes I'll bring the finger in, and
Yeah.
just like that, and she'll go because they get it, right? That's
Yeah.
what they need. That's what they want. They want someone to be they demonstrative with them, authoritarian, um, and that see, maybe that's what's the problem with the younger generations that are clamoring for the government to take care of them is they need some sort of structure, but they're not
Yeah.
understanding that the structure that they need is not for someone to take care of everything for you. that's not that's not structure.
Right.
That's just that's just babysitting.
Yeah.
Structure is saying, okay, well, here are the fundamental things you need. Here are here, we'll help you by putting rungs in the ladder that you can step up. It's sad to say, but this is a try hard country. That's what this is about. This is
Hmm.
try hard. If you want to go somewhere, if you want to do something, you've got to work for it. Now,
Right.
that's not to say that we are not an extremely overworked country. I mean, we are one of the most overworked countries in the world, right? I know it's hard to grasp that. To a
No,
certain
I mean
extent, it
it's
is,
it's
but
true. Yeah.
so I think we could all do with a little more time off. I think that the pressures of this world, the constant need to provide everything at a moment's notice, the instant gratification,
Hmm.
it hurts us in the long run. If we as a whole could sit back and just take a breath and relax,
Yeah.
You know, I mean, wouldn't it be nice if you knew going into a job that you were probably going to have upwards of anywhere from 2 to 3 months off from that job during the course of the
Yeah.
year? Wouldn't that sit pretty well with
Yeah.
you?
And I mean that's actually why the Marxist concept of wage slavery does hold some merit even to this day. Obviously, his solutions for it are absolutely ridiculous, but the concept itself does hold some truth to it. Um, because if you think about before industrialization, when capitalism started thriving, before that we had feudalism and a very agrarian society, so most people were farming. And so you would work extremely hard, especially during the spring. Then during the summer, I mean, there was just maintenance, right? You just had to, weed the crops and, take care of them, make sure, or if you had animals, make sure no wolves are going to go and, kill your sheep,
Right.
things like that. But it was much less than the spring. And then in the fall, you had a shitload of work to do for harvest. You had to pull all the things in, get ready for winter, chopping wood and all that kind of crap. Then winter, there was nothing to do. You had to feed the animals, and that was it. So there was a lot of time off in that case,
Right.
and we don't really have that anymore. I mean, unless even if you're a farmer, I would say you're probably doing a lot of work,
Well, yeah,
year round.
there's a lot of maintenance that goes on year round because especially if you
Yeah.
have animals, animals are 24 365, right? 24
Right.
7
Well, that's what I was
365.
saying. During the winter, that's all you would have is feeding the
Right.
animals. That's about it, though. Milking the
Well,
cows, maybe.
right.
So
But,
you might slaughter a couple, even for
sure.
meat,
But you're
if you
also
have the
taking, like for instance, whenever I was growing up, during the cold season, yes, the ground still had to be turned and kept
Mm,
fresh. During the whenever it would freeze, he would get out there and he would break it up after a freeze.
mm-hmm.
We would do other things like go out and we would still gather manure. From the few times that the cows were out, when they're allowed to go out, we would go out and we would have to gather manure and store that up and get it ready for whenever we would plant, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. Because we didn't buy fertilizer, you had to gather that shit by hand. No pun intended,
Literally. Yeah.
literally. But yeah, there's always things going on, and surprisingly enough, if you're self providing, guess what? You're growing shit in the winter time too. There are some few things that will grow in the winter that you're
Hmm.
maintaining, that kind of thing. And plus, you got to maintain stuff that you've put up for the winter, stuff that's down in the seed cellar, the potato
Right.
cellar, etc. It does. The farms are constant work. 300. There's really. It's insane though that.
Right, but there's up periods and there's more more down periods. We're not doing as much.
I
I
mean,
mean, especially if we're talking about a feudal society, we're talking about
I
much
mean,
more primitive farm than the kind that we have now. With much less space and much less like resources.
technically, if you want to get a job that will guarantee you some good time off, you got to go into teaching. Go into teaching
Yeah.
somewhere in K through 12 because you're going to have a good chunk of time come off during the summer, if you so choose. Yes, there is some work that has to be done to prepare for the next school year, but if you're on your game, you can have that shit done pretty quick. Like a smart
Yeah.
teacher has been preparing that the year before, right? Getting ready for the
Yeah.
following
And
year.
that's what my mom does. Yeah, I've mentioned before on the show. My mom's she's a private school teacher though. She works at a Catholic school nearby. Um, and yeah, so she's they have all the same like holidays and stuff that the public school kids have. Um, but then like when it comes to like lesson plans and stuff, she has the same lesson plan pretty much.
Yeah, I mean,
She doesn't have
there's
to do
some
all that much.
changes, but as
There's a few minor ones,
yeah,
yeah, but she doesn't have to like do a lesson plan every time because she
right,
teaches the same grade
sure,
every year.
and so it did make for some good time off, right?
Oh yeah, sure. They go on vacation every summer. They
Sure.
go, they went to Puerto Rico last year. They go to a cabin in Tennessee. They go to every year. They go
I
all
mean,
kinds
now,
of places.
and let's not jazz it up. It wasn't because she was, it's not necessarily. Well, she was at a private school, so I guess she got paid well, pretty well for a
Yeah,
teacher.
she gets paid better than most teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah. but it's a
which
private school. I mean, yeah,
which which I'm of a mind that that's where the real issue with education lies is the amount of money in public schools to pay the teachers, um,
right.
which
I mean,
makes
that's
them
largely
overworked. you know.
well, that's largely the fault of the teachers union. People don't really understand that. That it is largely them because the union decides how much is they negotiate with the state with how much the teachers are going to get
Does
paid.
every state have a teachers union,
I think there's
or
a
is that
federal I think it's just one teachers union throughout. I'm not super familiar with it. I only know what my mom's talked about basically. Um, but I mean, it works like any other union. Like I was in the Teamsters union um, when I was working for UPS, and they're countrywide.
I would have to I would be curious to know how that, because if I got into teaching, I would see that I wouldn't want to necessarily be part of a union. If that's a requirement to
I
be
would never want to. Yeah,
I mean, if a union's going to decide my pay, I mean, why in the fuck would I want to be? You know,
yeah. Well, that's
I
the
mean,
thing is the
why
union
would I
is
want to be a good teacher?
unions kind of act like the mafia in a way, in that it is optional to join, um, but things are not going to be easy for you if you don't. So it's technically not required, but you're not going to last long in that job if you don't.
Right. Hey, Ron, just curious. He said something. The starting pay here is slightly over 40K per year. That is plenty for somebody fresh out of college. He says the cost of living in Oklahoma is cheap
Hmm.
compared to other states. Just to put it out there, Ron, out of curiosity, I know that Oklahoma itself kind of took a hit when it came to agriculture, when it came to the farming industry as a whole, and oil, um, and started a transition. I want to say it was in the 80s, 90s into more technical fields. How has that been for Oklahoma? Is the state still pushing into the technological fields, computers, etc., and leaning away from agriculture? I'm curious about that. Just like I said, I grew up, I was there for so many years growing up.
Yeah. And I also agree with what Brandon says here. Unions had a great role at one point in time. I see more cons to them nowadays. Yeah, exactly. They were needed when workers didn't have any kind of way to have their grievances addressed. When it was an employer's market.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
but nowadays it's more of an employee's market. Especially after after World War II, or during World War II is actually when it was when that kind of shift happened, and that the government actually put a cap on how much you could pay employees. And the thing is, so many people were gone. So many people were at war, and it was hard to find good employees. And so, to incentivize them, they started giving more and more pay, which is how the market works. But then when the government put the cap on it, that's when they started offering things like health insurance. That's when they started offering things like more time off, especially paid time off. Um, and so that kind of ever since then, you can't just take that away now. Once that's been put in place, even once the cap was taken off for salary, you still can't take that away because people expect that now. And that's kind of made unions obsolete after that. And now they're just basically a way of controlling the employees more than it is with negotiating with the employer.
Oh, that's interesting. Ron says, as far as Oklahoma, they're going backwards on technology fields. They've lost Lucent Technologies, which employed over 7,000 people, and Xerox is also supposed to be closing their doors, or did close their doors. Says basically more agriculture and petroleum again. So going back to oil and crops again. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that would definitely mean that the cost of living is gonna is I guess getting more affordable in Oklahoma compared to others. Um, yeah, China just
Yeah.
beats everybody out on that shit.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I mean, I would like to go live in a state that's super cheap to live in. That
yeah,
would
but
be
it's
really
the
sweet.
it's the compromises that you have to make, right? You have to think about what you're sacrificing. When you talk about unions, so how does a union work in a right to work state like we have here in Florida? So this is a right to work state
Right.
on both sides.
You know, right to work doesn't mean right to work. It means right to be fired for anything, right?
Sure, I understand that,
So that is one.
but you also have the right to quit the job for no reason.
Yeah, right. And so that is one benefit of a union in a right to work state is that they can't just fire you for nothing. It's actually difficult to fire a person. There were very few things. One of them would be, no call, no shows. But it can't even just, it's not just one. You know what I mean? It has to be several of them. And then some manager or supervisor or somebody has to go and talk to the union delegate that is always on premises, and they discuss it and whatever, and they'll have a meeting with you about it, and that sort of thing. So it's much more difficult to fire someone who's part of a union,
Well,
which was originally the kind of the point
well,
of
sure.
a union was just protect jobs, right? So that is one thing that they'll still kind of do, but I do think that the cons far outweigh the pros.
Well,
And if you have someone not showing up all the time, then you should probably get rid of them.
well, I would think that very premise of unions would make them far more prevalent, say somewhere like Florida, for instance. But you
Yeah.
don't, it's not they're not that widespread throughout, here in Florida. You don't hear a lot of talk about unions here in Florida,
I mean, they're
unless
here, but yeah.
unless it's national level unions, right? I mean, there are some, but you don't hear as much talk about it here, which you would think if it's a right to work state, which basically leaves the door open for employers to be a lot more, I don't know, abrasive and carefree with their hiring and firing.
Yeah.
You would think that people would want more union protection here in this state.
It could be possible that people just, are better employees. People show up on time and do their job adequately and, you know, don't take advantage of, don't ride out the clock and things like that. If you do that, you're probably going to keep your job unless something happens to the company itself.
Right.
You're probably safe. That's the minimum that you have to do and you'll be fine. It's not really that difficult.
Well, yeah, it's become a shell game though. A con game as almost as much as anything dealing with unions these days now.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that was potentially going to hold up the Democratic debate was, this issue over employment rights and this, that, and the other, with the food servers there at the university, Loyola Marymount, or however it is, Marymount, whatever. But yeah, so it's again, but it's this idea that people you know people don't want to do for themselves. It's like, oh, we
Exactly.
need let the union take care of this for us.
Right.
No, once upon a time, workers just got together and said, you know what, we don't like the way this is happening, so we're going to walk out, and you can sit down and talk to us, and you could consider that. That was just a worker strike. That was, that was a walkout. That was,
No,
you know,
those
it
were
was.
also that was them unionizing, though. To be fair,
But that was within themselves unionizing, right?
well,
I'm
that's
not
what a
talking
union.
about like getting
Right,
paying
but that's how a
union
union
dues.
starts, and
I,
then
un-
the unions continue from
I
there. Yeah.
yes, thank you, John, for educating
Yeah.
me on
Well.
something as simple as how a union starts. But my point is,
Okay.
you don't need to have some organization, some NGO backing you and negotiating for you and doing all of this. Yes, you can unionize within the company as, a group of workers who are fed up and get your way without having to go through all the bullshit bells and whistles that go on with a union, all the smoke and mirrors that has to go on, and the games that have to be played, and the dues that have to be paid. You got to
Yeah.
pay. You pay for a union. Don't That's
Oh,
the
I know.
part that
Yeah.
nobody ever wants to talk about enough is you pay for that shit. It's like
Yeah.
homeowners association in your fucking
Well, I mean,
neighborhood.
so
It's
to be fair, when I was in the Teamsters union, it was $11. I mean, it wasn't.
Is
you know, out of
$11
the
what?
per month.
Okay, so what's your
So I mean,
point?
well, my only point is that it wasn't like it wasn't impossible to pay for or anything, but that is an issue though, is that they have people who are only in the union, like that is their job, is to be the
Right,
union,
right.
right? Like the union delegate that I mentioned earlier, he was always there because he was a mechanic. He fixed the trucks at the UPS warehouse. So he had another job, plus he was the union delegate. And I'm sure he got paid extra for that, for being a delegate. But he also had his main job, as opposed to people just being there or just being union, and that's it. I do think that's a huge issue.
Well, it's Ron is talking about General Motors having lost General Motors there in Oklahoma. He said that they came to the state on two conditions: no ad valorem tax and no union. He said they brought northern managers down who were ogres, and then everybody wanted to unionize. Then Oklahoma hit them with an ad valorem tax, and he says he doesn't like dues and the fact that the lazy employees are protected, and those are two big things. And the dues to me
Right.
are like the biggest thing, and I equated them to an HOA. I equate them to your taxes, John. If you're part of a union, you're paying taxes to have a
Yeah.
government decide what your job is going to be like.
Hmm.
I mean, that's exactly what a union is to me.
Yeah, it
You know,
is.
and I say this from the experience of actually having worked for a company in Seattle where we attempted we were looking at unionizing, and we actually got a firsthand experience with one of these union organizers, and he was shady as fuck.
Hmm.
I mean, just everything about what it was just, the big secret and this, and I know why they do it. I know
Hmm.
on both sides, but still, it's just like, look, look, dude, you're just coming off all sorts of shady. Nobody's gonna buy into this.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to deal with it for this, you know, and that's what I can't stand about them too. Is just that whole approach to it, where you've got to go
Yeah.
under the radar and make it, secret meetings and this, that, and the other. And when can we schedule time off to get together and talk? And oh
Yeah.
my god, are you fucking kidding me? And
Yeah.
most of the time they want to talk to you when you should be working, and it's like, dude, you know, got a job to do, or I don't.
Yeah.
There's no point to this.
And then Ed saying, "Oh, you worked for UPS." I told them to get bent. Yeah, I worked for them for a very short time. When it was over the holidays. Um,
Were you in the
so it was like
warehouse?
temporary work. Yeah, I was loading trucks.
I did that for RPS
Yeah.
back when
Yeah,
they
it
were a thing.
sucked. It sucked donkey dick. I'm so glad I'm not doing that anymore. But
Man, there were some thieving motherfuckers working in that place, though. I'm
I didn't
telling
I
you.
didn't see anything like that. But no, it was terrible though. Like the breaks and stuff, it was like 15 minutes, and you had to take a break. You couldn't like skip over or something like that, work through. You couldn't do anything like that. But it was like a 15-minute break every 3 hours, and that was just enough time because the warehouse was massive. If like all the trucks that they sent out fit in that warehouse, plus the extra trucks that were being worked on by mechanics, which had its own mechanic bay, like several doors of mechanics bays were there. It had its own gas station, its own gas pumps. It had its own like truck wash and everything. It was just this massive facility. So if you were in the middle of it, in the middle of the warehouse where I was, that 15 minutes was just enough time to put the box down that you were working on, run outside, and I mean run. I don't
Right.
mean like walking quickly. Run outside to smoke a cigarette, and then you got to run back to make sure you're back in time. Like that
John,
was all that time was.
do me a
It
favor.
was
Keep
fucking
talking for 1 second. I got a
all right.
situation.
Okay, but yeah, no, that was horrible, and that was because that was what the union had negotiated, was that 15-minute break, for every 3 hours. and I mean, it just wasn't enough. And I think it was more of a, I think it was more of like a countrywide thing for all of UPS. So they didn't take into account, you know, these massive facilities. I don't think they're all as big as the one I went to, but they didn't take into account like the individual places and how they work and their layout. And I was actually one of the lucky ones, even though I was in the middle. There were people that had to take like 3 ladders down to get down to the floor and then run out. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous.
Well, they say that's how they're working Amazon workers now. They're
Yeah.
they're making life horrible for them, but I don't
Are
know.
they unionized? I don't know.
But you think Amazon's going to let that happen?
I don't think they have a
That
choice.
they'll fire people and they'll replace them with robots or people that don't want to unionize. That's exactly what Amazon will do. They will not allow their workforce to unionize before they've automated them out. I mean, it's simple. I mean, especially the working conditions that these people are talking about. It's it's
Hmm.
it, it, it's amazing to me that unions aren't being spoken about already, but you don't hear anything about it.
Yeah.
Nothing. And I can just almost I call the ball on this. Amazon would not let it happen. I mean, when you Walmart, Walmart does an amazing job of shutting that shit down. Walmart will fucking close a fucking store before they'll let that thing unionize. And I say that from having
Yeah. Yeah.
secondhand experience of that shit happening.
Hmm.
Shut the fucking store down for remodeling because employees talked about unionizing.
Yep.
Boom.
So
What?
instead, right?
Amazon won't go for that shit.
Wonder what would happen if people in Walmart just started quitting and they couldn't fill those positions.
Not an issue. That's not an issue. They'll shut the fucking store down. They'll hire a staff of people and they'll reopen.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If they couldn't
Walmart's
fill the
got
positions.
they will fill the positions. They'll bring there's tons of people looking for jobs at
Fucking
Walmart
scabs.
constantly. Yeah. I mean,
Scabs.
well, they're not scabs if there's never a
I know.
union.
Yeah, I know. There's no union.
Never
I
going to be a
know.
union. Never going to be a union at there will never be a union at Walmart. It will not happen. It will. It's amazing to me when I watched something unfold, and it was just you. It was basically it was like reading this, and putting pieces together, and hearing a little on the side here and there, and come to find out, yeah, what they'll do. So Amazon would do the same thing. They will. They have
Can
a.
they afford to
You
do
know.
that though?
Yes. Do you know how many people are waiting to get jobs at Amazon?
Yeah.
I
But I
mean,
mean, closing something down for remodeling, I don't think they have time for that.
they
I mean,
won't.
they
Well,
got
they
all
won't have to.
kinds of
They
shit.
don't have to do that though. They don't have to worry about that because
Yeah.
they've got three people's jobs being done by one person already.
Yeah.
So, and they've got
I mean,
six people waiting to fill that job. Should that person walk away?
yeah. I mean,
So
I can tell you, I'm not going to work for Amazon or, UPS again. I'm not going to work
right.
for them. No, never, never again.
I mean, I mean, there's a wealth of employment pool out there for them to draw from. Yes, they're gonna, they're putting themselves in a position potentially for people to want to unionize. But it's funny. You can see. I just recently saw a commercial, some propaganda from Amazon showing employees that were specifically talking about how wonderful their work environment was and how much they loved working at Amazon. It was interesting to see this response to all of the negativity that you can find out there about Amazon work conditions.
Well,
But
yeah,
they, but they,
Ed's saying it's so weird. I've only ever heard Rob T talk about poor working conditions at Amazon.
well, you read.
I
All
mean,
you got to do is you
yeah,
just
yeah, there
have a
are,
have a have a aggregate news feed that's pulling from all over, and you'll see
yeah,
these headlines and articles to read about it. It's not like it's a ghost thing. It's been talked about.
right.
Um,
But now he's got an anecdote of his own. He says he knows a bunch of people who work at the Kenosha Fulfillment Center, and they tell him how awesome it is constantly. Well,
and
that's
that's
interesting.
And that's I'm not
And
gonna
see, I
say
think what Ron Helton's talking about here is what both of us are talking about. Watched a documentary film about temp workers. They claimed that it was a sweatshop working there. Right. So that with temp workers, yeah, they'll typically work the hell out of them because they know they're only going to be there for a little while.
sure.
And you can get a full time job from a temp job, but you have to really show
Well,
dedication and all that kind of nonsense. But
well,
yeah, normally they know you're leaving in 3 months, so they're just going to get the most out of you they can.
well, much in relation to the story that you told about your previous employment, one
Right.
of
'Cause
the
that's what mine was.
one woman that filed a lawsuit against Amazon, she filed a lawsuit because she was pregnant. She said the work requirements were very strict and very stringent, so you get 5 minutes for a bathroom break, or was it 10 minutes? 10 minutes for a bathroom break, and the where she's located is across the warehouse
Hmm.
from the bathroom, which is approximately a 5 minute walk across the warehouse to get to the bathroom. And so you're constantly at a point of being late, taking longer than the 10 minutes basically to go and take your bathroom break. And she's pregnant
Yeah.
and she's having to stand on her feet and this, that, and the other. And, so
Right.
but and it went on. There were other claims, blah, blah, blah. And, okay, so I'm not going to say that they have 100% bad working environments, and I'm not going to say they have 100% good. I think it's going to be a situation where, much like Walmart, yes, Ed works near a fulfillment center that is run well, see, managed well,
Right.
and operates in a satisfactory environment for their employees.
Yeah.
I'll use the old WM as an example. I hear tell of stores where things run tip top shape. You've got a military like leader in charge of the store who keeps people on their toes, doing their job, going and doing, getting things done. Stock is moving, stock is out, stock is accounted for, shipments are
Yeah.
in, out, whole 9 yards. And then you have other stores where it's like, what the fuck is this nightmare? What is going
Yeah.
on here?
Yeah.
How is this a functioning retail store?
Yeah. I was
So,
just going
and
around.
that's a multi-billion-dollar company. I mean, this is going to happen. You're going to have good, bad, and ugly. Now,
Yeah.
I will say this. Amazon did show that they will. They don't necessarily have the well-being of their employees at heart whenever they do increase wages but cut stock options.
Hmm.
That's kind of a punch to the employees. That was like
Yeah.
WM. We're going to go across the country. We're going to raise our starting wage to this, but we're not going to let you know that we're going to cut hours as well in our stores and minimize our staff.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's your balance. Every time there's a plus, there's going to be a minus with these corporations in that way. But no, Amazon, I can't see them being able to unionize.
Yeah. They probably won't.
The Amazon would have
But hang
ways
on,
around it.
real quick. I'm gonna go take a piss. I'll be right back.
All right. Uh, yeah, and Ron, I agree with you. Thank you for you made the same point that work conditions are based on good or bad management. Ed, just about everyone I know who was still working at a grocery store into his or her 20s went to the fulfillment center. They're all doing great, big money, and great conditions. And I like I said, props to whoever's running that facility. I think that makes like Ron said, like I said, it makes a huge difference in how those employees are handled, how they see their job. Because yes, Amazon does have the money to pay good money to people. That just it doesn't mean that every fulfillment center, every location that they're operating is being run to its best potential. Brandon says wage gap right there. Females have a likelihood in an age range to get pregnant, not working 100%, and be out of months having a baby. Nothing against women at all. But from a company standpoint, it's looking at statistics. Look, I get it. Yes, we can say that, but everybody has issues. Whether it's the statistics say women are more likely to get pregnant. Typically, women are more likely to get pregnant than men. I will agree with that, but that doesn't mean that you you have to work them like a dog, just like you are everybody else. Maybe you shouldn't work everybody like a dog if you're working them like dogs. Maybe that's the thought to have. But I mean, I don't know. Women and men in the workplace, it's all about the job. It's all about what you're doing. If women think they can step up and handle the job, they should do the job. Um, should they get special treatment because they're pregnant? Yeah, I guess a little. I mean, they are pregnant. They do carry our children for us. So, what can you do, right? I mean, does anybody disagree with that? I mean, they don't, that's just their function. They shouldn't, we shouldn't look at them any differently because they're carrying children. I don't know. I think it's a fair trade-off. But um, Ron, you have you got experience with a big corporation in that sense? You sound like you've got some experience with some of those big players out there. I know Ed has, in a sense. You've never really worked for a major corporation, is that right, Ed? You've kind of done your own thing most of your life, um, because those, a lot of people can't understand, don't really see the inside of it until you've been there and really done it. But I don't know. Yeah, I have a question for you. So, Brandon posited out that pregnant women are statistically, females have a likelihood in an age range to get pregnant, not work 100%, and be out for months having a baby.
Yeah.
Does that justify a wage gap? Is that
Well, no, it's the cause of the supposed wage gap. Or it's one of the causes, not the only cause. But yeah, it's one of the big reasons why there is a disparity between men and women working is that women take more time off. They're obviously more likely to get pregnant. Um, they're they're less likely to work overtime hours, which of course adds to the wage gap because overtime you get paid usually time and a half once you've gone overtime, so you're just making more money per hour at that point. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it, but it's not like because we hate women,
Well, right.
that's
See,
like,
but then from a libertarian standpoint, is it fair to make every woman pay for that statistical
what do you
reasoning?
mean? What do you
So,
mean to
for
make them
instance,
pay?
if I were a woman who never got pregnant, never got married, and et cetera, et cetera, I still have to look at a potential wage gap based off of what my gender statistics say happens at work. Like, do you like all is it fair to generalize that across all women from a
I
wage gap
mean,
standpoint?
as a business owner, you have to know, you have to at least like bet on who's going to be there and who's not going to be there at all times.
That doesn't answer the question
And
if it's fair or not. Is that fair
oh
to do
well, I
to
don't give a
all
fuck
women
about
across?
fair.
Is it fair to
I
do to
don't
all
give,
women across the board
no,
when
I don't
not
give
all
a fuck
women
about
do that?
fair. I'm talking about reality. Fair and reality are two different things.
Okay, so in reality, it should be on an individual basis.
Right. It should be on an individual basis, but no, it's also if you say, okay, this job, right, whatever this position starts at this dollar amount, you can get hired at that same dollar amount. It's where your pay goes from there that is determined by whether or not you're taking a bunch of time off, whether or not you're willing to work more hours, whether or not you're willing to work overtime hours,
So
whether or
all
not you're
pay,
willing to work a dangerous job, first of all. That's another one that
all pay should be based on that then.
should be based on your merit, yes,
Okay,
on your employability.
so when you're 50 years old, you should start being paid less money than other men younger than you because there's a better chance that you're going to die than a
Well, no, because
than a 25-year-old.
so hang on, because there's differences there, right? It's not like you're not they're not gonna cut your pay because of that.
Why wouldn't they?
Most
Why
like
not?
no, most likely what they would do is either offer you a severance package saying, hey, we're gonna try and bring some young blood in here. But the main thing is you have more experience at that age. You've done that job
Sure.
for a while, most likely, right? So you're gonna be getting higher pay
But
anyway.
unless they do let you go, and then you have to try and get a job at 50 years old where the
Yeah,
job market is going to pay you less because you have a higher chance of dying
not necessarily.
than a 25-year-old.
Not necessarily, because you have 30 years more experience,
Guess
or
what, John?
25 years more
It
experience
doesn't work
than that
that
younger
way. It
guy.
doesn't work that way in the bulk of companies. Just so you'll know, it doesn't work that way.
It depends on what we're talking
Ageism
about.
is a thing.
I
Just
don't
as
know.
much
I
as
know it is.
sexism,
Yeah, no,
just as
I
much as
understand.
sexism in the workplace, ageism is a thing as well.
No, I
So,
understand that it is.
these disparities based off of statistics, this is where a valid argument can be made that you can't generalize on this and sock it to an employee. Okay, I come in and I have to make 20,000 less than if I were 25 years old. That sucks.
Yeah, that
And I've
doesn't
got
sound
the
like something that would happen.
but I mean, yeah, that's maybe a little bit of a
I
gross
think that's an
misrepresentation.
exaggeration. I think
Sure.
that's a
Okay. Let's
huge
call it five.
exaggeration.
Let's call it $5,000 then. $5,000 is pretty impactful over the course of a yearly
If you're
salary.
just starting at a job, you're not going to make the same as someone who's been there for 30
If I've
years.
got, but if you've got 30 years experience, you should make more than someone who doesn't have 30 years experience in a brand
Yes.
new job. Because
Yes.
people have to look for a job, right? And that's the expectation is that 30 years of experience speaks louder than new, fresh, green person that doesn't
Right.
have all these years of, and this is what it comes down to, all these years of brainwashing and mindset and set in their ways and this, that, and the other. We want
Hmm.
fresh minds that are easily manipulated and malleable and will do the way we want the first time without trying to do it their way. So that's what 30 years of experience can wind up becoming whenever you're out in the workforce at a later point in life. So these, but yet these generalizations that go on for whatever reason do suck. And it is a legitimate argument if we cop to, well, statistics say so all women should suffer the wage gap penalty for that.
No, it's not. That's not what I'm saying. That's not like the wage. It's
In
not.
the
No, they're not paying women less off the bat, right? Unless like a man negotiates a higher starting pay, that's one thing. But if we're talking about like two people, one male, one female, fresh out of college, when they go for the same job, they both get the same job, they're going to start at the same amount. Now, where it goes from there is up to them and their abilities and their especially their negotiation abilities, plus their how well they work, their work ethic is going to affect it,
so
and whether or not they're like I said, whether or not they're taking time off, whether or not they're
okay.
willing to work overtime, those sorts of things.
So you're telling me that sitting down and interviewing two applicants, and I'm going to pick this male and I'm going to pick this female, knowing statistics, when I have an open amount that I can offer them,
Hmm.
I'm not going to look at those statistics and offer that male X amount of dollars and offer her X amount less than that amount. There's nothing saying I have to start them at the same amount.
Well, there is a minimum wage, but
Well, as long as we're meeting that, but
right,
we're talking two people sitting down
but
interviewing for a job. If I offer him 10.50 an hour, and I offer her 10 an hour because I know that she's statistically going to take more time off, etc. But minimum wage is only 9, so I'm covered. You
yeah,
don't think
but
that
for
mindset is not impacting
no, I
what
don't
people are
because I
being
know that
offered?
no, because most companies have a starting wage with like this position starts at this amount. That's usually how they do it because it's easier to just do it across the board rather than have someone decide
Well,
that.
I'm gonna put this out there that I do believe that when the age gap when the wage gap is discussed, that we're talking that most of the conversation is more about salaried positions. We're talking about jobs where,
Yeah.
yearly figures are doled out. It's not about hourly work
So
that we're dealing with.
even more
Because
than with salary, if you're willing to work longer than the average day, if you need to get something done that makes you go further into, for further off the clock, basically. If you have a 9 to 5 job and you have to stay until 7, a man is more likely to do that than a woman is. That's why there's that pay. So obviously that looks good for the
I
manager.
you
Man is more likely
say
to give them a raise.
you say a
That
man
sort of thing.
in this day and age, you say a man is more likely to do that than a woman, and I
That's the
completely
truth.
disagree with that. I think
I mean, you
one
can
is just
disagree
as
with the facts,
I
but those
I
are facts.
where
I mean,
where do you have facts that say a man is more
do you want
likely
me
to
to actually
work?
pull? Do you want
There's
me to actually pull
yes,
shit
if you've
up?
got
Yes, there are
statistics that
actual
say a
things.
man is more likely to stay after work than a woman, that's fine. But that factors into your salary as well, assuming that
No,
that's going to happen.
what I'm saying is you're more likely to get a raise at that point because you're putting in the extra effort. You're more likely to be able to negotiate yourself a better raise.
Okay, well
That's what accounts for
yeah, but
the
we're
wage
talking.
gap.
I was referring, but of course, my point was talking about sitting down and offering these two people a job. I refuse to believe that those statistics don't factor in when they're offering an opening salary to these people. It
Yeah,
would
because most of them are set. Like they're set already at the corporate level. They're set as like this position is worth this amount of money.
a range. Typically, it's a range.
Okay, it's
Typically,
a
it's a
range.
range of money that you can offer. So, I will honestly say that it wouldn't surprise me that men are typically offered the higher end of the spectrum of that wage range that you can offer employees than women are, because that statistic, if that is a factor that plays into a woman's employment, I refuse to believe it doesn't factor in at the beginning of her employment as well as later on throughout her employment. That to me speaks to the argument that is made about the wage gap. Now, I'm not saying it exists. I'm saying because I know why it exists.
Hmm.
There's a disparity in jobs that women do versus men. One of
Yeah,
the
there's
biggest
absolutely that.
factors involved in this in the first place.
Yeah.
Um, you know, um, but I don't. People hire people with predisposed notions just as well as people go into jobs with predisposed notions.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. You can't get rid of like subconscious bias or unconscious bias. If someone does actually hate women, you can't get rid of that and you can't really account for that because they're just not going to hire women. But the law tells them that they can't say, "I'm not going to
Sure.
hire you because you're a woman." So you're never going to know that. You're never going to know why that woman wasn't, hired.
Now, now, I think it would be an interesting social experiment to again get rid of things like affirmative action, civil rights, take those things out of the picture, and see what actually happens. I mean, we've already got the Supreme Court starting to lean that way in a sense by this recent ruling precedence that was set that you didn't have to hire someone because if they're gay, basically based off how you're affiliated or how you see yourself being associated. Um, it would be interesting. It, but I think it would be chaotic. Oh, for a while. I mean, there would be some there would be some crazy bullshit going on. I'm just saying there would be some crazy shit going on.
Oh yeah, people would riot. Yeah, and that's why I've said every time I've argued against the affirmative action, I've always said like I don't think now is the time to try and bring that up and try and get rid of it. Basically, that would be a terrible. It'd be a terrible time to do that.
Yeah, the when the statistics start to play in individuals, that begins to be a problem. It was kind of the same thing. That's where private insurance or company provided insurance really sucks. Like you work in a restaurant. I dealt with this for years, not having insurance simply from the standpoint it was so expensive in a high turnover industry that even if you were there, you could be there. One place I was there by 2 years, and still the premiums, the costs weren't going down. Like they should have been because it's such a high turnover industry, and you take it up the ass that way, or you just don't have insurance, while you work in an environment that, for all intents and purposes, is very dangerous, right? But insurance companies don't want to cover, you know, no, you turn over too many employees. But there's a lot of industries out there that are like that. Um,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's
I mean, to be
it's
fair, at my job, we turn over quite a few employees. We'll hire a bunch of people all at once, like 10, 11 people, and then a month later, there'll be two.
right,
And it's just because of the nature of the job. It's not for everyone, and but there's a lot of people who apply, and so we hire way more people than we need, knowing that a bunch of them are going to quit
right.
within a week or two. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah, that's definitely a thing. But we also offer, health insurance, which includes like dental and things like that.
yeah. Well, it's the work environment is completely different these days. It's the corporate environment now is so rigid. It's just so hard to, the sexism has really reared its ugly head in so many other ways when it comes to the workplace, that the wage gap is a small thing now. It's
Like
like,
what? Like what?
what do you mean? I'm talking about like the Me Too thing, and just more and more men at a corporate level, offices and stuff, completely talking about how it's difficult to even converse with people anymore.
Yeah,
You don't know what to say. You can't be yourself anymore. You can't talk and joke. You have to just walk on eggshells, especially around
right.
female coworkers. You're constantly on eggshells anymore these days. The PC environment is really
Oh yeah,
making work life sick for people. It's
yeah.
toxic. Everything's becoming toxic.
That's why I'm so glad I don't have that problem at my job.
What's
We
that?
have the like having to walk on eggshells and having to be all PC and stuff. Like we say some of the worst shit
But do you have
ever.
you have female coworkers, right?
A couple.
Okay.
Not that I work with directly, other than one.
Well,
But that's it.
all I will
And
tell you
she's not in the
this:
cooler or anything. She's not like with us, you know. But
all it takes is one person. I don't care if it's male or female. It just takes one person
yeah,
to completely turn that entire environment on its ear.
yeah, it's
I
true.
mean, that day you hear that you're about to spend the next 3 weeks having awareness classes and meetings and
The day that
uh,
happens at my company is the day I quit because I'm
yeah,
not. No, I'm
yeah.
not dealing with that bullshit.
Uh, Brandon says, I disagree, Robert. The Me Too thing has been a problem for a very long time. It's just been more recent they are voicing their issues, but that's been around. I'm not saying it hasn't been a problem. Yeah, there's, the
Well, so also
misogyny
the
in companies has been around for a long time, but
right, but it also has gotten a lot better than it was, in previous decades.
it's
So
just
there's
more
that
vocal now.
right, exactly. It's more vocal, and not only that, but the whole Me Too thing. While it started out as a noble cause, and it got rid of some of the nastiest people that we know of, uh, it's also affected a lot of innocent people, and it's become this whole thing of oh, you stared at me too long, hashtag Me Too, that sort of thing. It's gotten innocent people fired and innocent people just their lives wrecked. I
Well,
don't think the Me Too movement overall is not a positive thing.
Well, here's something I want to say about the Me Too thing, especially when we talk about people like Harvey Weinstein, right?
Hmm.
This is a big one for me because I have to say this: America, your as culpable in Harvey Weinstein's actions as he was. You are just
Okay, let's hear this.
what ever since I was a kid in the 70s, 80s, it's always been a thing that it was just this, it was like the running joke about Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
who you have to sleep with. You got to sleep your way to the top. Somebody's going to go out, girls going out to Hollywood and jumping on a casting couch with their legs spread to get a part, and guys doing the same thing, going out and oh, you're probably going to be in the porn industry. You're going to have to fuck your way to the top. You're going to have to fuck your way. This was a common talked about thing for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And now, guess what? It was happening. Yeah, surprise. We knew it was happening. We talked
Yeah.
about it like it was a joke. We made jokes about it. You saw it on jokes on TV constantly in sitcoms and stand-up comedy. You, America, watched it fucking happening. You knew it was happening. You talked about it. You joked about it and acted like it was just something. And guess what? It was real. So you're just as culpable for not standing up and going, is this really fucking happening? Shouldn't somebody look into this? Is this a real thing?
Yeah.
So when people sit around and talk about the fuck you, the Me Too movement from that standpoint, fuck all you people who knew it was going on.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're talking about like people in the industry who are just now coming out and saying, "Oh yeah, what's going on and it's affected me so much." Okay, you knew it was going on, you were part of it, and now because it's popular, you're coming out. You fuck what celebrities say anyway. But I do want to address Brendan's
Yeah, I just
question.
realized
But
I only have top chat on my pop out. So go ahead. Yes, please.
yeah, and then we should probably end on that. Yeah, it's gonna take a few minutes. But yeah, he's saying, so question for you fellas. Where's your stand, or what's your stance on false rape accusations as far as how should these people be punished? Um, I mean, I personally think that they should get the same sentence that the rapist would have gotten had they actually had done it.
That is the common. That is the common
Yeah, I mean, it makes
mindset.
sense because you want to ruin someone's and something that they didn't do, then yeah, sorry, now yours is ruined. I mean, because their life is already ruined anyway, just from the accusation, regardless of whether or not they did it. Just from the accusation, their life is ruined. And so, I mean, yeah, they need to make an example of those people. I mean,
Um,
that's just absolutely horrible.
I will say when it's all said and done, I agree with that, but it does create you have to be prepared for a very large gray area
Hmm.
as to whether or not they were actually trying to ruin somebody's life or they actually felt like they had been raped.
No, if you've actually been raped, then you know you've been
Like if you're
raped.
drunk and you had sex with somebody, but you don't remember anything about it, and you accuse somebody of rape, that's possible, right? Like you could
It's
feel like
possible.
you were raped, but then come to find out you were drunk after all the bells and whistles and all the sheets are pulled back. You find out you were drunk and you kind of acquiesce to this. Well, did somebody take advantage of you? No, so it wasn't rape, but were you trying to ruin somebody's life? Were you falsely accusing them or were you accidentally accusing them, right?
Yeah,
There begins to be a gray area there. But I'm all for sorting out that gray area to keep people
right.
from going to jail for shit they didn't do.
Right. I mean, there definitely needs to be more of a punishment than there is now. Um, So, I mean, generally they just walk free, or they might get a light slap on the wrist, but that's really it.
Well, I will say,
Meanwhile, they've ruined someone's life with just an accusation, regardless of due process, and that's the worst part of our culture right now is no due process. I mean,
well,
yes, in the courts there are, but I'm saying in like the culture, there's no due process. As soon as someone says this person did something, and they point the finger, that's it. That person's life is ruined, regardless of whether it comes out a month later that nothing actually happened.
right,
That person's life is still ruined. It's absolutely the worst part of our culture is that mob mentality,
right,
that pitchfork and torches. You
yeah.
know, it's the worst.
Well, yeah, and but that's the culture we live in now. That's you got to raise, get your friends together and get enough likes to get the pitchforks raised.
Right.
Um, but I will say this, I'll end on this note because since we didn't talk about it in the show tonight,
Yeah, I know.
I do want to say that I do have a grievance with anybody in Washington on the Democratic side right now that is in support of holding the articles of impeachment from going to Senate, outside of the fact that if it's used as leverage, like some have said that they may not even send them up at all, just so that he has the smear on him of being
Right.
impeached but never actually facing trial, which is
Right.
bad. He needs to sit for trial if that's the way it's going to go. Do the process, but I do still have a problem with Mitch McConnell's approach on this, and that's why Pelosi says she wants to hold it till she's guaranteed that there will be a fair trial, not collusion between Republican jury and Donald Trump's camp. Which that's what she's saying she wants to hold it for, is because she wants to make sure that it's not going to be a colluded mess to where the Republicans are just ready to toe the Trump line. So I think that we all need to look at whether or not where the constitutionality of any of these moves stands. I don't think it's constitutional to bring articles of impeachment against him and not give him the trial. And he's asking for it now. He's like, "Fuck you. Where's my fucking trial?" Right? He put something
Yep.
basically out today that said that.
And
So
that's what I'm talking about, though, is that lack of due process. It doesn't matter if you're guilty or not. We accused you. Now you have to go away.
right, and
So
some
it's
have
fucking
speculated
ridiculous.
that some Democrats may just want the indictment to sit over his head
Yeah,
and
no, and
never
that's what I
actually
was
go to
saying.
trial. And that's like, how can you not take him to trial for that?
Right. No, I mean that's what I was saying before. That was part of my prediction was that they're going to drag it out as long as possible, so that during the campaigns, during the general
Right,
election, they can be saying, "Oh, look, he's being impeached. He's being impeached. He's been
right,
credibly accused of X, Y, and Z.
exactly,
He's being impeached. You can't vote for him. He's being, you know what I mean? It's just over and over. So they're going to
right,
hit you over and over again with
right.
that.
Now, I will say, I'm not going to discount the fact that Pelosi does have some legitimate right to call foul for the moment. Say, hold on, McConnell's come out and said that they're gonna work hand in hand with Trump
Hmm.
to make sure that this goes the
Hmm.
way they want it.
Yeah,
So she does have some room to call foul.
I don't think she
If
does.
she, well, I mean, do you think? I don't know that that's okay for people who are supposed to be deciding his fate to work hand in hand with him on deciding his fate. I
But it's
do have
okay
a
to work
problem.
hand in hand against him. So I mean, I'm sorry. At
But
this
there,
point,
but there's a
if one
difference in
person
working
cheats,
against. They're not working with him against him. They're working against him.
right.
Period.
They're all working together against him.
Well, if the
It's
Democrats are
not like
working
it's not like
together
it's
against him, the
unbiased.
Republicans are working
No, no, no.
with
The thing
him
is, this whole
for him.
fucking thing is a clown show. Okay, it's
I'm not
not. It's
saying
not like
it's not.
no one there is interested in justice. No one there is interested in justice.
But there's
All
a
right,
reason why it's not okay
it's
for the
just
judge to sleep with either the defendant or the plaintiff in a case. There's a
right. But
reason,
that's
and there's a reason why the jury doesn't sleep with the
well, that's the
defendant
kind of
or
thing
the.
that happens. That's the kind of thing that happens. TV. Well, that's what this is. It's a shitty TV show.
I get it, but that
I
still,
mean,
I'm just saying,
nothing's gonna happen with
she
it.
has a sliver of legitimacy. If she
No,
steps over the line and uses it as leverage when it comes to the election, that's fucked up. I agree. But if she's legitimately saying, "Hey, we need checks and balances in place, in the proper
that's
way,"
fucking rich. That's
I
fucking
get
rich
it,
coming from
but
her.
hey, the impeachment
No,
process is
it's
still
a
part of the checks and balances system. However it came about, it still is.
no.
And
Listen, if you're gonna shit on something and then get mad when someone else shits on it, I don't feel sorry for you. No, like if it's okay for you to shit on it, then it's okay
hey,
for him to shit
I'm
on it.
all for the
That's
if the
it.
Democrats have broken any laws in this, by all means, let's get it out
It
there.
doesn't matter what they have. It's nothing's gonna happen.
Well,
That's what I've. That's
Well,
what I've
they
maintained forever. Nothing's gonna
right.
happen just because someone breaks the law
But this
in
is the same.
Washington.
This is the same
Come
thing. This is the
on.
same thing you've consistently said about Trump too. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
It's like it
nothing's gonna
doesn't
happen. Yeah,
matter. Nothing's gonna. It doesn't matter. He can do what he
right.
wants.
He's
It's
not gonna
say
be removed.
nothing's gonna happen. He can do what he
Yeah,
wants, and it doesn't.
right. He's not gonna be
He can
removed from
say
office.
whatever he wants. Nothing's gonna happen. No,
It's
everybody's gonna be
true,
like, whatever. Okay, this is Trump. Moving on.
and it's been true the whole
Right?
time.
Isn't it sad? It's just, god damn, this is what we've come to. I want a redo. Can
Yes.
we just have like a 1920, let's go back to 19, I don't know, 50? Can we go back to there? Like we're through most of, well, we still have a couple of, god damn it, we can't go back to any time where there's
No.
not some war right on the horizon. Fuck.
Yeah, we've been at war since the beginning of our country.
Wait, what if we do a redo? What if we could do a time machine, time set back to World War II, and actually get involved in the beginning of World War II and shut that shit down quick
I don't think that'll help.
and show Hitler how to do it right, and just go ahead
And just start taking
and
over.
just take over fucking Europe at the same time, like, and
Yeah.
use his troops to do it. Right?
Oh man! All
But
right, let's get through some of these chats here, and then let's get the fuck out.
run with it,
Right.
brother.
Well, let's see. Yeah, Ron's pretty much agreeing with me over here. It's
Oh, that's all that
impeachment,
matters,
political
right?
pandering for 2020.
It
Pelosi
is.
saying she's holding is just more proof. It's partisan impeachment, all baloney. Right, that's what I'm saying. You know, it doesn't. It's all baloney anyway, regardless of which side it is. Uh, let's see. Ed will check our balance.
Is he going to check our balance?
That's what he said.
Yeah, let
And
me know how much I have. I need to know if I can afford drugs this week.
we did miss your trivia earlier, Ed. So
He had trivia?
he did. He had some sort of like movie reference or something that I didn't get. So I'll go ahead and tell you I failed it. Um, there were only 20-something years that we have not been at war. Yeah, I mean we got to take a break. You know, once in a while you got to kind of build up your forces again, take a little break, get some new technology out there. You know, you need a few break. You know, you need a break once in a while.
Yeah, it's
But
I don't know, John. I want it to be done. I do. But she did send him an invitation to make sure and give the State of the Union address on February 4th. Um, so, you know, she's still doing her job, doing what she's supposed to do. Hey, we're going to be impeaching you, but why don't you come and talk to the nation about how good things are?
yeah.
Oh, I can only imagine what that speech is going to be like.
Oh yeah.
The State of the Union. No, 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 no. This is the State of the Trump address.
Yeah, he's gonna be
The State
ripping
of
them
the
all
Donald.
kinds of new assholes.
Right. Well, it was funny. Somebody, I read an article today, and I won't go any further after this. I just thought it was funny. He was talking about how Trump, pointed to very specific language in the phone call with the Zelensky, in which he said "we" and "us," using the third person collective, first person collective. That kind of thing, as opposed to I and me. He wasn't asking for himself,
Yeah.
right? But it pointed out that he was just, the day he was being impeached, he was at a rally, and during the entire thing, he's sitting there saying, "So they're trying to impeach us. We are, we're under this witch hunt, this, that, and the other." So the whole time he's talking about himself, he's speaking in that first person collective, and so they're like, "So what was he really saying on that call?" I'm like, "Really? This is, this is, yeah, okay, we're gonna get him for the, being one of those third person reference kind of people." Because he does speak about himself in the collective first person. So that must have been what he was saying on the phone call.
Yeah,
Well,
I guess so.
I don't know.
I don't know.
It hasn't hurt Joe yet, so, Joe's doing all right.
Yeah.
Joe's doing okay. He's doing all right.
Yeah.
Uh,
somehow.
hey, do me a favor. Check out the debates, though. There was some good.
Yeah,
There was some good scratching and clawing going on that I thought was impressive. So if you get a chance, check it out. And outside of that, folks, thank you for stopping by. Thanks for listening to our drivel and our random meanderings that had nothing to do with what we were going to talk about in the first
it's
place.
true.
John took us down a journey
I know.
with
I need to stop coming
his
up with my
Twitter
own
cancer.
fucking. I need to stop coming up with my own topics because apparently
Right?
they last for 2 hours.
Your Twitter is cancerous. You
It
started
is.
this with cancer,
This
and look at
whole
what
yeah,
it
this whole
degraded
stream
it.
is cancer.
See what you did.
I know. I spread the
Um,
cancer.
but please, if you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, do all those things. You'll probably hear me say this after we're done anyway. John, they can find us places. Where can they look? What can they do?
Yes, down in the description, everything you need right down there.
It's
Our
there
Twitter, we have our Twitter down there. You can follow us and watch me,
on the
dive
cancer.
in, dive into the cancer once in a while. And we've also got our Discord server link. So if you're not in there, go ahead and jump in there. I think most of the people we've seen tonight are in there. Um, then we've got freedomscoop.com. We can go and check us out there and check out some other people such as Ed and
Ed.
Stephen Ignoramus.
Ignoramus.
And yep, we've
Wyatt.
also got T-shirts that are being sold on freedomscoop.com. And just underneath that, there's the promo code, so you can get 15% off of our shirts, which is pretty awesome. I think that's a good deal.
I think it is.
So yeah, hopefully some of you guys get some. That we would appreciate that quite a lot.
Right? And it's not going to some big corporate oligarchy.
No, just going to us.
It's just going to
It's
two
going.
poor
It's going to buy me some more of
podcasters.
this. That's what it's going to. It's going to buy me more of that.
Just FYI, folks, I don't spend mine on booze. I'm not. I'm not.
I
Your
will. No, I'm going to be honest. Yeah,
I'm
I
not
just
your typical
spend it on-
bum. I'm not your typical bum.
Right.
All right, we're gonna get the hell out of here.
You're a bum
John.
with standards, right?
Yeah. Hey, again, thanks for stopping by, folks. Yes, Ed, we will do this again on Monday. Hey, thanks for the props, Brandon and Ron. Good to see you. Everybody out there, have yourselves a good night. We'll be back again on Monday for our 9 o'clock shooting the shit episode. For those of you who may not be able to make it, do remember Christmas is coming up on Wednesday, so it may impede some of you from seeing the show. So that being said, please have a happy and safe holidays. Please enjoy your time with your family, friends, or whoever you might be spending the holidays with. Outside of that, we'll also be back after Christmas for our regular Friday night show next week at 8:30. Outside of that, stay safe, have a good night, and we'll talk to everybody soon. John,
Yep.
peace.
See you guys.
If you like what you heard tonight, please make sure and go ahead and subscribe. Hit that like button. Tell your friends, tell your family. Blast it on Twitter. Throw it on Instagram. Send it in an email to your grandma and mail it to your congressman. Make sure everybody hears about it. Let's get part of the discussion going with all of you out there just as well as we're having the conversation here. We're going to keep talking. We'll see you next time.